Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving headfirst into something that, well, it affects all of us every single day. Dopamine.
Yeah, absolutely. And specifically, we're using Dr. Anna Lemke's really compelling book, Dopamine Nation, as our roadmap.
Think of this as your cheat sheet, maybe, to understanding why you're drawn to certain behaviors. How modern life just impacts your brain's reward system constantly.
That's it exactly. At its heart, Lemke's work reveals this powerful truth. Our unprecedented access to pleasure, all this easy dopamine, it's actually throwing off the natural balance.
Throwing off our brain's reward mechanism.
Right. So we'll be exploring the ins and outs of dopamine, why we seek pleasure, the fundamental drivers.
And importantly, some strategies, right, for finding balance in this, what did you call it, the Age of Indulgence?
That's the term.
Yeah.
And yeah, real-world strategies.
Absolutely. So our goal in this deep dive, extract the core insights from each chapter of Dopamine Nation. Make the science, understandable.
And useful, immediately useful for you to maybe recognize patterns in your own life.
Exactly. No dense scientific jargon, just actionable knowledge to help you maybe make some positive shifts. Okay, let's get into it. The engine room. Dopamine.
Yeah.
Why are we constantly chasing that good feeling?
Well, the first part of the book, The Pursuit of Pleasure, really sets the stage. Chapter 1, our masturbation machines, that title.
Yeah, grabs your attention.
It does. It introduces dopamine as the star player in our brain's reward circuit.
The feel-good chemical.
Basically.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating, and maybe a bit counterintuitive, is that repeated exposure to things that give us pleasure. It actually lessens the impact over time.
Like tolerance.
Exactly. Your brain kind of says, been there, done that, need something stronger now. It's why we chase novelty or, more intense versions of the same thing.
It's like that first coffee buzz versus needing a double shot just to feel, well, normal.
Precisely. But Lemke takes it a step further. It's not just needing more pleasure. There's this counter-reaction.
Oh, right, the pain side of things.
Yeah, she introduces the vital concept of the pleasure-pain balance. Picture a seesaw, like a teeter-totter.
Okay.
When we experience pleasure, the brain doesn't just sit there happy. It actively generates an equal and opposite pain response to try and get back to level, equilibrium.
So that high is kind of borrowing happiness from the future.
Mm-hmm.
Leads to the crash.
You got it. The come down, the guilt, the craving. That's the pain side pushing back.
And this is where modern life gets tricky, right?
Yeah.
Lemke points out smartphones, the internet,
Uh,
endless dopamine fountains.
Totally. She uses this image almost like a hypodermic needle, delivering tiny digital dopamine hits all day long.
Notifications, likes, endless scrolling.
Exactly. It's a continuous, super available source of potential pleasure, constant temptation.
And she uses Jacob's story to illustrate this, right? His struggle with compulsive behavior fueled by online porn.
Yes, Jacob's story is powerful. It wasn't just the act itself, but the sheer unlimited access online that really amplified this dopamine-driven cycle. Tolerance built up fast.
And the shame that often comes with that.
Right, the initial shame was huge for him. But understanding the brain mechanics, the tolerance, the cravings, it helped shift his view.
From feeling like a moral failure to understanding the biology.
Exactly. Understanding how these super high dopamine digital stimuli work and figuring out that line between, moderation and compulsion, it's crucial.
Which brings us right into Chapter 2, Running from Pain. This really hit home for me. The idea that a lot of our dopamine seeking isn't just for pleasure, but to escape something else.
That's such a key insight. People often turn to these behaviors, substances, food, endless social media as a way to self-medicate.
Numb the anxiety, depression, boredom.
Any kind of discomfort, really.
Yeah.
But the really insidious part, these behaviors often end up making the original pain worse. It creates this vicious cycle.
It's a trap. Feel bad, seek pleasure, feel worse later, need even more pleasure next time.
Exactly. And you mentioned the opponent process theory earlier.
Yeah, how does that fit in here? With running from pain.
It's central. When you grab that pleasure hit to escape pain, the relief is temporary. Then comes the automatic pain response, the withdrawal, the letdown, maybe even more of the feeling you were trying to avoid.
So you use it again to escape that feeling.
And if you keep doing that, your baseline shifts. The underlying pain can actually get deeper, more persistent. You need the substance or behavior just to feel kind of normal.
Wow. And Lemke uses David's story here. The Adderall prescription.
Yeah, David's story is a stark illustration. Prescribed Adderall for social anxiety and ADHD likely got some initial relief.
But then it escalated.
Exactly. He started taking more than prescribed, which sadly isn't uncommon, developed a substance use disorder, then needed other meds for the side effects.
How many?
Yeah, it ultimately made his initial anxiety worse and just created this huge imbalance in his system. Trying to medicate the pain led to more pain.
Okay, so pleasure leads to pain. Escaping pain backfires.
Yeah.
Chapter 3, the pleasure-pain balance, dives deeper into the brain science.
Yes, this is where she really unpacks that teeter-totter metaphor. The brain's constant drive for equilibrium, for homeostasis.
Trying to keep things level.
Right. But chronic exposure to those really high dopamine stimuli we talked about, it can actually lower your baseline dopamine levels over time.
So the seesaw's resting point actually tilts towards the pain side.
Precisely. It results in what she calls a dopamine deficit state. You feel restless, unmotivated, kind of empty or flat.
Anhedonia almost.
Yeah, a reduced ability to experience pleasure. And crucially, your sensitivity to natural, everyday rewards, a good chat, a walk outside, enjoying food, it gets dulled.
That makes so much sense. Why scrolling Instagram feels more engaging than talking to someone sometimes.
It provides a bigger, easier hit, even if it's less meaningful, and she gives some numbers to illustrate the scale.
Rather percentages.
Yeah, just for context, like chocolate might give you a 50% dopamine boost over baseline. Sex, maybe 100%. But addictive drugs, like amphetamines, a massive 1,000% increase, that huge surge just overwhelms the system and throws that balance way off.
And Sarah's story with cannabis fits here, using it for stress.
Perfectly. Just like Jacob and David, Sarah started using cannabis for relief, for stress, but repeated use led to tolerance.
Needed more for the same effect.
Right. And over time, it actually increased her anxiety. The very thing she used to manage stress ended up making it worse. A classic case of the pleasure-pain balance tipping the wrong way.
Okay, so we've explored the pursuit of pleasure, how it can mess things up. The book then shifts to self-binding, strategies for getting back control. Chapter 4, dopamine fasting.
Right. An important clarification. It's not about eliminating all dopamine. That's impossible and undesirable.
Dopamine is essential, right?
Absolutely. Dopamine fasting, in Lumke's terms, is more about taking an intentional break from those specific, highly rewarding, often problematic stimuli.
Giving the brain's reward system a chance to reset.
Exactly. To recalibrate.
And she has that acronym, dopamine as a framework.
Yeah, it's a really practical tool. D is for data, track your triggers, your patterns.
Okay.
O is objective, set clear goals for the fast. P is problems, anticipate the challenges, withdrawal. A is abstinence, the actual break.
The hard part.
Can be. M is mindfulness, paying attention to cravings, thoughts without judgment. A is insight, understanding your relationship with the behavior.
Learning from it.
N is next steps, plan for reintroduction, if appropriate, in a healthier way. And D is experiment, treat it as a learning process, adjust as needed.
That's super structured. Helpful. What about the time frame? How long does this fast usually need to be?
Lemke suggests around 4 weeks is often a period where people might start noticing a real restoration of dopamine sensitivity.
4 weeks, okay.
And she mentions studies like with alcohol use disorder where abstinence led to reduced depression symptoms, suggesting this reset really can happen.
Yeah, and Delilah's story illustrates this. Abstaining from marijuana.
Yes. Delilah used it daily for anxiety when she stopped.
Anxiety got worse at first. That opponent process again.
Exactly. It intensified initially. And this is key, as she pushed through those uncomfortable first weeks, her reward circuits started resetting. She broke that cycle of using weed to mask the anxiety it was partly causing. That initial discomfort was actually a sign of healing, of readjustment.
Okay, so fasting is one tool. Chapter 5 talks about broader self-binding strategies. Sounds like building fences around temptation.
That's a great way to put it. Self-binding is about creating obstacles between you and the impulsive action. So you're not just relying on sheer willpower, which often fails.
Makes sense. What kinds are there?
She outlines 3 main types. First, categorical self-binding. Just completely avoiding specific triggers.
Like deleting the app or not going down that specific street.
Precisely. Then there's chronological self-binding. Setting time limits, using a timer for screen time, only allowing yourself games on weekends, that kind of thing.
Putting boundaries around the time.
Right. And the third is spatial self-binding, physically removing the temptation from your environment.
Like keeping the cookies out of the house or charging your phone outside the bedroom.
Exactly. All ways to make it harder to act on impulse. And she also stresses the importance of meaning.
Meaning? How so?
Connecting the behavior or the lack of behavior to a larger value. Eating healthy because you value health, not just restricting pleasure. Using tech intentionally for connection, not just passive scrolling.
Linking it to your why, that makes it more sustainable.
Definitely. It provides intrinsic motivation beyond just fighting the urge.
And the patient with the sports betting addiction, he used these.
Yes, a great example. He used categorical binding, avoiding all sports media. No triggers.
Wow, it's tough.
And chronological binding, setting very strict time limits for any betting activity. This structured approach helped him break the compulsion.
Okay, chapter 6, a broken balance. This sounds like it goes deeper into full-blown addiction.
It does. This chapter explores how addiction really disrupts that brain homeostasis, that balance. It gets to a point where the person is in a persistent dopamine deficit state.
Constantly feeling low, agitated.
Yeah. And the only thing that provides any real, though temporary, relief is the addictive substance or behavior itself. Normal pleasures just don't register anymore.
They lose their shine. That sounds incredibly bleak.
It's a very difficult state, and Lemke touches on medication here.
Can meds help restore the balance?
They can be a valuable tool, absolutely, especially for severe conditions. But she also raises a really important caution about the trend of over-medicating general discomfort.
Like popping a pill for every little bit of stress or sadness.
Right, because that can potentially blunt our natural dopamine responses too, creating its own set of problems long term. It's about appropriate use, not a quick fix for everything.
So less medication, maybe more mindfulness. She brings that up again.
Absolutely. Mindfulness and self-awareness are key. Learning to recognize those triggers, those cravings as they arise.
And creating a pause.
Creating that space between the urge and the action, making a conscious choice instead of just reacting.
And the example of the patient recovering from cocaine addiction shows this.
Powerfully. He learned to identify stress as his major trigger. Instead of automatically reaching for cocaine.
He used other tools.
Exactly. Focused breathing, journaling to manage the stress. He even became aware of smaller, subtler triggers, like avoiding caffeine, because even that little rush could be risky for him. It's about that whole ecosystem of awareness.
Okay, interesting. Now, the third section of the book takes a surprising turn. The pursuit of pain. Chapter 7. Kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, this is where she introduces the pain paradox, the idea that intentionally embracing certain kinds of discomfort can actually naturally boost dopamine levels.
And enhance pleasure later.
Exactly. It's like that feeling after a really hard workout. You're tired, maybe sore, but there's also this sense of accomplishment, even euphoria.
The runner's high kind of thing.
Sort of, yeah. That controlled, chosen discomfort tips the pleasure-pain balance back towards pleasure. She even cites research on cold water immersion.
Oh, yeah. What did that find?
A huge dopamine increase, like 250% above baseline after the cold exposure. It's a significant physiological response triggered by that brief, intense stress.
Wow. But I guess you could overdo this too. Pain-seeking itself could become a problem.
Oh, absolutely. Lemke cautions against that. Just like chasing pleasure, excessive or uncontrolled pain-seeking can disrupt balance, become its own unhealthy compulsion. It's about finding that sweet spot, that hormesis effect, beneficial stress.
And Michael's story with cold showers.
Yeah, Michael was in recovery from drug addiction. He started daily cold showers.
And it helped.
He found they gave him this feeling of energy, invigoration, and maybe surprisingly, it reduced his drug cravings.
So the discomfort triggered a natural dopamine release.
Seems like it. It provided a natural reward, helping him find satisfaction outside of the artificial highs he was used to. A healthy way to press on the pain side of the seesaw.
Fascinating. Okay, chapter 8 moves to radical honesty. It feels like a shift from brain chemistry to, well, psychology and relationships.
It is, but it's deeply connected. Lemke argues that honesty, especially about our struggles, our vulnerabilities, is crucial for recovery and for building real intimacy.
How does lying hurt recovery?
Well, lying, secrecy. It feeds the shame. It keeps the problem hidden, prevents us from getting support, and reinforces the addictive cycle.
Whereas honesty breaks that cycle.
Honesty fosters self-awareness. When you admit the struggle, even just to yourself at first, you start to dismantle the denial.
Which is often a huge barrier.
Massive. And sharing honestly with others creates connection. That connection releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which feels good. It's a healthy, pro-social reward pathway.
So honesty itself can be rewarding biologically.
In a way, yes, it builds trust, reduces the burden of secrecy, and opens the door to support. Lemke uses powerful patient stories to show how transformative just being radically honest can be.
Confronting the uncomfortable truth as the first step.
Exactly. Denial keeps you stuck. Honesty allows for reflection and growth.
Then Chapter 9 introduces pro-social shame. Now, shame usually feels purely negative. How can it be pro-social?
Yeah, that's a common view. But Lemke makes a really important distinction. She's not talking about toxic, isolating shame that makes you want to hide.
Okay, what kind is she talking about then?
Pro-social shame, it's more like recognizing you've violated a community norm or hurt someone and feeling motivated to repair the harm and reconnect. It reinforces social bonds and accountability.
So it's shame that pulls you towards the group, not away from it.
Precisely. When it's coupled with honesty in a supportive environment, this kind of shame can be a powerful driver for positive change. It's about responsibility to the community.
And she connects this to groups like AA.
Yes. Mutual support groups often leverage this constructively, sharing struggles openly, acknowledging harm done within a space of acceptance. It fosters that pro-social shame.
A desire to make amends, live up to the group's values.
Exactly. It channels that uncomfortable feeling into motivation for sobriety, for rebuilding trust, rather than letting it fester into self-destruction.
And the story of the doctor with the DUI.
Right. He felt intense shame, naturally. But in AA, he found empathy, not condemnation. That transformed his shame.
From toxic to pro-social.
Yes. It became a catalyst, motivation to take responsibility, make amends, and rebuild his life with the group's support.
Wow. Okay, finally, Chapter 10, the biology of belief. This sounds like it ties everything together.
It really does. It synthesizes all the themes. Lemke emphasizes that lasting change, real well-being, comes from aligning our lives with our core values and beliefs.
So it's not just about managing dopamine hits, but finding deeper meaning.
Exactly. Having a strong belief, whether it's in recovery, community, spirituality, a personal mission, provides this profound sense of purpose, and that reduces the reliance on those fleeting external dopamine fixes.
It provides a more stable internal source of fulfillment.
Beautifully put. It's about integrating the practical strategies, the fasting, the self-binding, with the wisdom of community and a strong personal why. Science meets meaning.
And she shares her own story here, which makes it very human.
Yes, her honesty about her own struggle with romance novel addiction is so important. It shows these patterns can affect anyone.
And how did she find balance?
Through participating in a recovery group, being honest, and consciously realigning her daily actions with what she truly valued, her family, her work, that helped her find deeper joy in real life, not just escape.
So to wrap up our deep dive into Dopamine Nation, we've hit on the power of dopamine, that crucial pleasure-pain balance.
Right, how it's constantly shifting, especially in our modern world.
And then the strategies. Dopamine fasting, self-binding, embracing discomfort, the absolute necessity of honesty.
And the importance of community and belief. It's a really holistic picture.
Absolutely. And hopefully understanding these principles can empower you, listening now, to navigate this dopamine-rich world a bit more consciously.
With more awareness, more intention, and maybe a greater sense of control over your own choices.
So here's a final thought for you to mull over. Thinking about everything we've discussed, what dopamine-seeking behaviors might you recognize in your own life? No judgment, just observation.
And based on that, maybe what's one small, manageable step you could take towards finding a bit more balance?
Perhaps trying a short dopamine fast from one specific thing, or identifying one self-binding strategy that feels doable for you right now.
It's about starting small. And if this conversation sparked your interest, definitely check out Dr. Lemke's book, Dopamine Nation.
Yeah, or look for other resources. There's a lot more depth there to explore these fascinating and really practical ideas.